This should not be happening at all. For decades, the global scientific community considered the farthest reaches of our solar system to be an absolutely calm, quiet, and predictable place. Researchers launched the Voyager spacecraft on a long journey, simply to confirm long-established and mathematically elegant physical models. A gradual, smooth, and incredibly boring fade of the sun's influence in the deep vacuum of space was expected. But scientific data from the very edge of the solar system suddenly revealed a completely impossible and frightening picture. For decades, experts had meticulously prepared for this historic transition into uncharted interstellar space. Scientists had a clear and precise theoretical understanding of exactly how our home territory should end. Astrophysicists confidently predicted an unremarkable boundary between the light of our star and the eternal cosmic darkness. Instead, our old and reliable equipment recorded something terrifyingly powerful and completely unforeseen by our science. Our familiar picture of a safe and well-studied cosmos suffered a massive, irreparable conceptual crack. All life as we know it exists solely thanks to a gigantic protective bubble that is constantly forming around our blazing sun. This colossal, invisible sphere is scientifically called the heliosphere. It continuously shields the inner rocky planets from the highly aggressive outer space environment. Every second, our home star actively ejects powerful streams of superheated plasma particles in all directions. This ceaseless solar wind races through the cold, dark expanse of space. Its speed is utterly unimaginable to the ordinary human mind. It acts as an ultra-reliable energy shield against deadly galactic radiation and destructive interstellar rays. Without this reliable magnetic protection, our planet's atmosphere would be destroyed very quickly. The Earth's surface would have turned into a radiation-scorched, lifeless desert, with not the slightest chance for the emergence of life. The mighty breath of our star literally pushes dangerous cosmic particles away from the habitable zone. We are completely safe only thanks to this invisible, everyday confrontation of immense energies. For many years, this elegant model seemed to scientists to be the absolute standard of physical stability and mathematical predictability. Astronomers confidently built their numerous theories on the basis of these simple and logical assumptions. The heliosphere has always been considered our personal safe haven in the vast and turbulent ocean of the boundless galaxy. Researchers firmly believed that within this colossal bubble, the laws of physics familiar to us on Earth were constantly at work. No one in the world expected any surprises from these familiar and well-studied natural mechanisms. It was believed that the solar wind was supposed to slowly and gradually lose its colossal initial energy. As it moved away from the sun, its pressure would logically weaken over gigantic astronomical distances. At the very outer edges of our system, it was supposed to simply fade away quietly and completely unnoticed. Scientists expected a smooth transition of the plasma into the surrounding interstellar void without any sudden jumps or barriers. This picture seemed incredibly harmonious and very reassuring to the entire global scientific community. Scientists created numerous detailed graphs and beautiful computer simulations of this peaceful cosmic transition. In school textbooks, the boundary of the solar system was described as a very boring and unremarkable place. There, supposedly, all significant physical activity from the radiation of our home star simply ceases. It was believed that absolutely nothing interesting or potentially dangerous to humanity was supposed to happen there. Astrophysicists predicted only ringing silence and a gradual drop in temperature to an absolute minimum. It was the boundary between our cozy home and the endless interstellar corridor of space. Academics envisioned this vast corridor as completely empty and entirely safe for future flights. No one in the scientific community even doubted the absolute correctness of this calm and reassuring theory. For decades, this beautiful dogma remained the unshakable foundation for planning all long-distance automated space missions. We sincerely believed that we had fully unraveled the most important mystery of the structure of our immediate surroundings. However, our universe has never been a simple and straightforward place for carefree space travel. The true reality of space always turns out to be far more complex than even the boldest human imaginations and mathematical calculations. The farther our historic research probe flew, the more minor inconsistencies appeared in the transmitted data. Analysts on Earth studied the incoming fresh telemetry from the dark edge of the system with growing concern. The probe's instruments regularly recorded strange fluctuations and inexplicable variations in particle density within the stream. This strange data did not fit at all into the theorists' perfectly smooth and even graphs. The solar wind was behaving completely differently from what the strict equations of classical astrophysics predicted. The particle flow became increasingly chaotic and unpredictable as the spacecraft ventured far ahead. It seemed to be physically sensing the approach of something massive and incredibly dense directly in its path. The pressure of the hot plasma fluctuated in sharp jerks, disrupting the picture of a star's calm demise that had been built up over the years. Experts began anxiously reviewing their old calculations and complex computer models. They sincerely tried to find a hidden mathematical error or a minor flaw in the program's logic, but all the onboard equipment of the flying probe had worked absolutely flawlessly throughout the long years of flight. The sensors continued to methodically transmit to Earth a very harsh and, as yet, completely incomprehensible truth to scientists. The technology was not at fault. It was simply that the wild nature of deep space turned out to be completely different. The environment around the spacecraft became increasingly unstable with every million kilometers traveled. This completely shattered the long-held illusion of absolute cosmic tranquility at the farthest reaches of the solar system. The sun's protective bubble turned out to be far from a peaceful zone of quietly fading plasma streams. It was rapidly transforming into a highly tense arena of hidden conflict between various powerful galactic energies. An incredible physical confrontation of truly grandiose and deeply frightening proportions was about to unfold there. This confrontation was to take place at that very distant boundary which science has named the heliopause. For a long time, the heliopause remained merely a convenient term in the pages of thick astronomical dictionaries. It is a theoretical boundary where the pressure of the solar wind is finely balanced by the powerful pressure of the interstellar medium. We had always naively imagined this place as a soft and very pliable air cushion. It was supposed to spring invisibly and gently dampen the momentum of particles flying from our sun. Absolutely none of the Earth-based experts expected to encounter a truly rigid and solid physical barrier there. It turned out that hot, stellar winds are literally smashed to pieces against it with incredible force. The energy of this impact creates colossal stress there, which is completely impossible to simulate under normal Earth conditions. Space had prepared a very harsh, sobering, and unpleasant surprise for our overly self-assured science. This shocking discovery completely changed all the established rules of the game in the study of the far reaches of space. The historic flight of the famous Voyager spacecraft through this mysterious zone was the culmination of the entire massive mission. It left leading researchers around the world literally holding their breath as they watched their glowing monitors. The signal from the flying probe took a very long time to arrive, and every tiny message was awaited with immense anticipation. Every new byte of valuable information, traveling toward Earth for hours on end, brought more and more unsolvable mysteries. Scientists read this new data with a growing sense of anxiety and complete bewilderment regarding the current situation. What was supposed to be a great, triumphant confirmation of human genius turned out to be a complete surprise. It was a true conceptual collapse of absolutely all classical textbooks on the structure of our solar system. We had believed too strongly and naively in our own exceptionalism and the illusory safety of our little corner of the cosmos. The scientific community had stubbornly ignored the very possibility of a powerful, aggressive external influence for far too long. And now, we all had to honestly acknowledge this long-standing and very presumptuous collective scientific blindness. The heliosphere turned out to be far from just a soft protective shield for the comfortable and safe existence of the planets. It functions as an incredibly robust barrier, holding back colossal and highly stable external pressure. What was actually hidden behind this barrier had absolutely nothing in common with the vacuum we were accustomed to. Deep, dark space appeared before us not as an empty void, but as a very dense and aggressive environment. It is filled to the brim with powerful streams of radioactive energy from ancient stars that perished long ago. For many decades, we thought we were peering through optical telescopes into an absolutely silent, empty room. But it turned out that all this time, we had been naively staring straight down into the depths of a raging galactic ocean. Our relatively thin solar plasma bubble is constantly bearing the full, monstrous weight of this dark expanse. Enormous external pressure is constantly trying to crush our defenses and break through into the habitable zone. Recognizing this terrifying fundamental fact was the first step toward understanding our true biological vulnerability. When Voyager finally reached the presumed heliopause, a completely incredible and unpredictable historical event occurred. The data coming in from its onboard sensitive detectors plunged experienced scientists into deep shock and utter bewilderment. The solar wind had no intention of fading away smoothly and dissolving harmoniously into the endless darkness of the night. Yet that was precisely how beautifully it had been depicted in thousands of brilliantly defended scientific dissertations around the world. The reality at the system's edge turned out to be far rougher and more dynamic than any bold academic expectations. Instead of the predicted gradual deceleration, the high-speed, powerful stream of superheated particles behaved very strangely. It suddenly and incredibly sharply crashed into some kind of mighty invisible barrier in its direct path. The speed of the flying solar plasma at this specific location dropped almost instantly to near zero. It looked as if an expensive sports car traveling at full speed had crashed head-on into a thick concrete wall. Such a violent and uncompromising collision of the most powerful physical forces simply could not have occurred in empty space. The probe's sophisticated onboard instruments recorded incredible turbulence and utterly inexplicable chaos in the plasma. And this strange phenomenon occurred precisely at the spot where, for decades, only dead silence had been expected. Hot particles streaming from the sun began to rapidly accumulate, compress tightly, and scatter chaotically in all directions. They were simply physically unable to break through the suddenly appearing dense outer barrier. A zone of colossal internal pressure and tension arose, grossly violating all known laws of particle ballistics. A so-called massive stagnation zone formed there, the existence of which no one could have even suspected before. The physical phenomenon unfolding was very similar to thick, churning foam right at the base of a giant waterfall. It is precisely in such dangerous places that monstrous amounts of immense kinetic energy continuously collide and dissipate. Our home star was literally pushing something very large and dense aside with incredible force. The unfamiliar interstellar medium turned out to be an incredibly dense material, completely impervious to the solar wind. We had always naively and very confidently assumed that the interstellar medium was simply a pure vacuum. Science had mistakenly perceived it as an absolute void of matter, where there is absolutely no resistance to motion. It was expected that beyond the powerful influence of the Sun's magnetic field, Voyager would fly in a completely different manner. The spacecraft was supposed to simply glide endlessly and absolutely freely through the dead void by eternal inertia. No dense energy barriers on its long journey to other distant stars were even theoretically anticipated. But the new telemetry data received screamed at the stunned researchers of a completely opposite, terrifying fact. The probe was desperately trying to break through an incredibly dense, very thick, and highly viscous galactic substance. The instruments showed a frighteningly sharp and anomalous spike in the concentration of deadly cosmic rays on the hull. They were coming at us in a very dense and continuous stream from a deep and completely unknown part of the galaxy. This harsh, aggressive external environment actively resisted our feeble presence, squeezing the heliosphere from all sides. The historic and thrilling moment when the spacecraft crossed the heliopause boundary became a major turning point. It forever changed the current trajectory of development in all of modern practical and theoretical astrophysics. Previously, researchers on Earth had expected to see a very slow and extremely gradual change in all key indicators. According to calculations, this incredibly tedious process was supposed to stretch out smoothly over many long months of flight. None of the flight controllers were at all prepared for such sharp spikes in the readings on the screens at the Flight Control Center. However, the actual crossing of this boundary turned out to be frighteningly abrupt and completely unexpected for all systems. It was very much like the instantaneous flick of a giant cosmic switch in the pitch-black interstellar night. In literally a matter of days, the tiny, fragile probe found itself in a completely alien and utterly incomprehensible place. It was a truly deeply hostile physical world, brimming to the brim with harsh, high-energy, deadly radiation. The familiar earthly laws that governed our home system suddenly ceased to apply beyond that thin line. This striking, sensational discovery forced the global scientific community to act very quickly and with the utmost resolve. It was necessary to immediately and publicly acknowledge the fundamental and long-standing conceptual error in the face of the new facts. Our vast solar system turned out to be far from a dull island of matter gradually dissolving into the void. Its structure proved to be far more complex and architecturally perfect than previously believed in high academic circles. We live safely within an incredibly durable energy shell with very clear and tangible boundaries. This durable shell is a rigidly defined capsule floating through cold galactic space. Every day, it struggles with great difficulty to push through an incredibly dense and raging invisible stellar storm. The boundary of this protective capsule is constantly and very loudly cracking at the seams from monstrous external pressure. The nature of this powerful compressive effect of unknown origin still causes a great deal of controversy among scientists, and we knew absolutely nothing about this until we tried to physically look outside. Such an abnormally abrupt and rapid halt to the solar wind had only one logical physical explanation. It clearly meant that the outer dark space possesses colossal and completely independent energy of its own. To instantly halt millions of tons of superheated particles flying at immense speeds requires a very strong barrier. To create such a monolithic barrier, a truly unimaginable and constantly active opposing force is needed. Ordinary dead space is simply physically incapable of exerting such powerful kinetic resistance against our wind. It was then that scientists, with genuine primal horror, realized the full, terrifying, hidden truth about our galaxy. Interstellar space is, in fact, filled to the very brim with immense, destructive, and hidden power. This savage power constantly and mercilessly presses against our relatively fragile protective magnetic bubble of salvation. It rapidly compresses it from every conceivable direction, stubbornly trying to break through to the inner habitable planets. We are at the very epicenter of an invisible cosmic war that never ceases for a single second. The world's leading experts on Earth have begun urgently recalibrating their receiving sensors. Deep down, many of them desperately hoped that this was just some trivial system failure of old equipment. None of the prominent researchers wanted to so readily believe in the crushing collapse of old and reliable theories. Everyone was truly afraid to admit that the cozy and safe universe had turned into such a harsh reality. Humanity had been very comfortable and at ease living with the pleasant thought of an empty and harmless near space. But every new, thoroughly decoded telemetry packet forever shattered these last naive hopes of the scientists. The dry numbers on the monitors only mercilessly and very coldly confirmed the darkest and most alarming scientific conjectures. A distant mechanical probe transmitted vast amounts of data about an environment that was deeply frightening in its aggressiveness. It was fundamentally alien to absolutely all of our rich earthly experience of many years of observing the sky. We had officially left our home and found ourselves in completely uncharted, terrifying waters. The most critical problem was that established scientific theory was not merely slightly mistaken. This was by no means a minor inaccuracy in some complex basic mathematical formulas or in flight trajectory calculations. Old classical astrophysics turned out to be absolutely, simply, catastrophically blind to the true and real state of affairs. For many decades, it hid from us the true nature of interstellar space right around our solar system. Outdated academic dogmas greatly hindered a fresh look at the structure of our sun's most complex protective mechanisms. What we had so long and so confidently called an absolutely empty and dead vacuum turned out to be something entirely different. It was an incredibly dense, extremely active, and aggressive physical cosmic environment, saturated with deadly energy. This environment eternally lives by its own harsh and uncompromising laws, which remain completely incomprehensible to us. For centuries, magnetic storms of colossal proportions have raged within it, and dense streams of heavy charged particles constantly sweep through. And now our small probe had to survive in conditions that science had deemed impossible. Every new decoded message from the Voyager spacecraft became yet another grueling ordeal for the psyche. It dealt an incredibly powerful and painful blow to our boundless scientific and proud human arrogance. We finally clearly understood the fundamental limitations of our previous methods of remotely studying the boundless universe. Our science turned out to be like a person who studied the ocean without ever leaving his cabin. Having truly opened the porthole to the vast cosmos for the first time, we looked far out into the distance with immense horror. What we saw there was not a soothing, eternal calm, but a raging, destructive storm of gigantic proportions. And the most terrifying thing was the realization of the immense duration of this incredibly powerful natural phenomenon. This invisible energy storm had been raging non-stop right at our doorstep for millions of years. We simply never had the necessary tools before to notice it in time. The insurmountable boundary of the heliopause turned out to be far from the logical end of our long journey. It was merely the beginning of a completely new, incredibly complex, and daunting phase of deep space exploration. A tiny probe miraculously broke through this dense, invisible wall of high-temperature plasma and deadly radiation. But what it discovered just beyond it caused analysts even greater alarm for our future. The physical parameters of the new environment completely contradicted any logical predictions by scientists. For decades, we had been confident that beyond the solar system, we would find only a dead and utterly cold void. But instead of dead silence, all of humanity came face to face with something incredibly massive and active. That encounter forever changed our understanding of our place in a vast, complex, and extremely hostile galaxy. Our old illusions of complete safety quickly crumbled, leaving us face to face with a very harsh reality. And that was only the beginning of a whole series of shocking astronomical discoveries. Immediately after crossing the heliopause, the Voyager instruments recorded yet another glaring anomaly. According to all existing textbooks, interstellar space was supposed to be incredibly sparse. Scientists expected to find only a handful of atoms per cubic meter of empty space there. However, the plasma wave detectors began transmitting utterly disconcerting figures back to Earth. The density of the surrounding medium suddenly turned out to be dozens of times higher than any theoretical expectations. This fact completely shattered the established view of the interstellar medium as an ideal absolute vacuum. The probe literally plunged into a thick cosmic broth consisting of ionized plasma and dust. Instead of flying freely, the spacecraft was now struggling through dense, resistant matter. It was as if an airplane had suddenly found itself underwater at a great depth. The physics of the process had changed so radically that scientists had to come up with new formulas on the fly. Astrophysicists were completely baffled by this incredible concentration of external matter. A logical question arose: where did all this dense mass in the dark space between the stars come from? It turned out that the galaxy is literally overflowing with the remnants of exploded supernovae and ancient gas clouds. And all this monstrous mass of matter is pressing down with immense force on our tiny solar system. Our protective bubble isn't just floating in the void. It's desperately holding back the pressure of this dense ocean. The probe was able to record a unique sound of this dense space using plasma antennas. Scientists converted these electromagnetic oscillations into an audio format accessible to the human ear. The resulting sound resembled the low, vibrating hum of a giant machine or a siren in the darkness. It was the true voice of interstellar space, and it sounded incredibly heavy and menacing. The very fact that waves could propagate so clearly in deep space proved the high density of the medium. The realization of this immense density radically changed our perception of interstellar travel. We had always dreamed of effortless flights to distant stars through empty, pristine space. But now it became clear that any future spacecraft would face colossal friction and resistance. The interstellar medium turned out to be a harsh obstacle capable of destroying unprepared hulls. Space ceased to be an empty corridor and turned into a viscous, dangerous, and unpredictable quagmire. This insurmountable density also explained why the solar wind stopped so abruptly at the boundary. It simply ran into a monolithic wall of dense interstellar plasma that wouldn't let it pass. Our star turned out to be surrounded by something like a dense cosmic shell compressing the heliosphere. If this external environment were even slightly denser, it could crush our protective bubble. We exist in a very fragile balance of forces that we had not even suspected before. Experts tried to find a local cause for this anomaly, hoping it was merely a temporary phenomenon. Perhaps the solar system was simply passing through some abnormally dense cloud of galactic dust. But analysis of the data has shown that this high density is constant and global in nature. This is not a local glitch, but a fundamental property of our part of the Milky Way galaxy. We are constantly sailing through this dense fog, with no way to leave it or go around it. This discovery caused serious existential anxiety among leading astrophysicists and theorists. If our understanding of the fundamental density of the cosmos turned out to be so wrong, what else have we missed? The entire foundation of modern astronomy was built on the assumption of an empty universe. Now, however, we had to acknowledge that space is filled with hidden and extremely dense matter. And this invisible matter actively shapes and constrains all processes within our system. The Voyager instruments continued to methodically record this high concentration of plasma. Every new kilometer of the journey confirmed that the density of the medium beyond the heliopause was not going to decrease. We found ourselves trapped by our own ignorance, facing reality head-on. The cosmic ocean turned out to be filled with thick, heavy water that presses down on us every second. But that was only half of the global problem looming over the scientific world. What we had considered an absolute vacuum turned out to be more than just an incredibly dense obstacle. The probe's thermometer readings were about to deal another, far more devastating blow to our theories. The physics of this strange place continued to behave completely illogically and even aggressively. The probe was plunging into an environment that violated all the basic laws of classical thermodynamics. And the next anomaly forced scientists to doubt the very adequacy of their knowledge. In deep space, far from the warming rays of any stars, it must be unbearably cold. Physics textbooks have always claimed that the temperature of the interstellar medium approaches absolute zero. Scientists expected to see readings of minus 270 degrees Celsius. In such extreme cold, all molecular motion should practically come to a complete halt. However, Voyager's thermometers suddenly showed something completely insane and utterly impossible. The temperature of the plasma beyond the heliopause turned out to be abnormally, unimaginably high. The instruments recorded readings reaching an incredible 30,000 and then 50,000 degrees. This is several times hotter than the glowing surface of our own blazing sun. The probe literally found itself in an invisible cosmic furnace, where particles possess colossal thermal energy. According to all the laws of thermodynamics known to us, this simply could not happen in the dark void. At first, the researchers panicked, concluding that the spacecraft's sensors had finally failed due to radiation. It was impossible to logically imagine an environment that was simultaneously a cosmic vacuum and a scorching inferno. But repeated checks of the telemetry stubbornly confirmed this incredible and terrifying fact. Voyager is indeed flying through a wall of extremely hot plasma, enveloping our system. Our solar system turned out to be immersed in a gigantic reservoir of scorching galactic gas. This temperature paradox left physicists scratching their heads in search of a reasonable explanation. The answer lay in the specific behavior of particles under conditions of high radiation and magnetic fields. Due to the absence of a dense atmosphere, these hot particles could not transfer their heat to the probe's hull. Therefore, the spacecraft did not melt instantly, even though it was flying through an incredibly high-energy environment. The plasma was scorching hot at the quantum level, possessing colossal kinetic energy. But the very fact of such gigantic energy existing beyond our solar system was deeply unsettling. What exactly is constantly heating this interstellar matter to such catastrophic levels? Clearly, monstrous physical processes are occurring in the galaxy, hidden from our understanding. Energy from the explosions of ancient supernovae constantly boils this cosmic ocean. We are surrounded by a raging flame of radiation, from which we are separated only by a thin solar shield. This discovery has completely overturned our naive notions of a quiet and frozen cosmos. We thought that Earth faced only a slow freeze after the sun eventually goes out. Now it turns out that a scorching hell awaits us outside, ready to breach our defenses at any moment. The heliosphere protects us not only from deadly radiation, but also from this incredible thermal energy. If our protective bubble were to suddenly burst, this energy would crash down on the inner planets. The heat of the cold void has become the clearest proof of our total vulnerability to the universe. We sit inside a tiny climate capsule, surrounded by extremely hostile conditions. Every second, a fierce battle rages at the edge of our solar system between the solar wind and hot plasma. This is not a peaceful coexistence of two environments, but a constant conflict of monstrous thermodynamic forces. And we, on our fragile planet, are merely passive spectators of this grand battle. Physicists desperately tried to create new mathematical models to describe this strange boiling of the vacuum. They had to introduce new variables accounting for the influence of galactic magnetic fields on plasma heating. Classical science was bursting at the seams, trying to adapt to this shocking new reality. What was considered science fiction just yesterday has become official research protocol today. The edge of our world turned out to be a zone of extreme tension and terrifying anomalies. With each day of data analysis, scientists came to understand more clearly their enormous fundamental error. They had underestimated the true power and aggressiveness of the vast galaxy in which we all live. The interstellar medium is not a quiet graveyard of matter, but an active, seething, and deadly cauldron. And our probe, piercing this scorching environment, became the first scout behind the lines of a mighty enemy. But the strangest and most inexplicable discovery awaited the researchers just ahead. While the impossible density and anomalous temperature could still be subjected to some sort of logical interpretation, the behavior of the magnetic fields at the heliopause boundary left scientists completely stumped. The magnetic picture of the world was not merely distorted. It refused to obey the basic rules of spatial geometry. And this next glitch in the matrix turned out to be far more terrifying than all the previous mysteries combined. The magnetic field is an invisible framework that holds the entire structure of our universe together. Inside the heliosphere, magnetic lines are dictated exclusively by our sun and radiate out from it in all directions. The solar wind continuously inflates this gigantic bubble, creating a protective zone for all the planets. Scientists were absolutely certain that upon entering interstellar space, this framework would change dramatically. The galaxy's magnetic field was expected to have a completely different orientation, unrelated to our sun. A sharp reversal of magnetic vectors was anticipated, a sort of compass shift at the boundary between two worlds. For decades, astrophysicists had been building complex computer models of this long-awaited transition. They expected to see a clear boundary where the sun's influence completely gives way to galactic forces. All of the Voyager spacecraft's sensors were calibrated to capture this monumental shift. Researchers eagerly awaited the moment when the instruments would reveal the chaotic mixing of two distinct energy flows. But reality delivered a surprise that upended all those neat theoretical calculations. Space turned out to be far more complex and mysterious than even the boldest hypotheses had suggested. When Voyager finally pierced the heliopause, the spacecraft's magnetic compass stubbornly refused to turn. The direction of the magnetic field lines outside turned out to be exactly the same as inside our solar bubble. They hadn't changed their angle at all. They had simply become several times stronger and much denser. This was absolutely incredible and fundamentally contradicted all mathematical models of magnetic field interaction. It was as if a massive galaxy had, for some reason, decided to align perfectly with the magnetic field of our tiny star. Such a coincidence seemed impossible from the standpoint of classical physics. Physicists were completely baffled by this inexplicable and utterly absurd discovery. Two independent magnetic systems cannot accidentally align their directions with such perfect precision. The sizes of the Milky Way and our tiny solar system are simply incomparable. It's as if you stepped out of your house and discovered that every road in the world runs strictly parallel to your hallway. Such a perfect alignment of magnetic lines appeared artificial or the result of some unknown powerful influence. Classical astrophysics simply had no formulas to explain such an incredible phenomenon. Additional data from the probe only intensified the researchers' collective bewilderment. It turned out that the plasma density beyond the heliosphere had increased tenfold. At the same time, the magnetic field itself behaved with alarming stability, showing no signs of turbulence. Instead of the expected chaos and collision of fields, scientists observed what is known as a magnetic highway. The field lines of the heliosphere and the interstellar medium seemed to merge, creating a straight corridor into open space. This corridor proved to be an ideal transport route for particles of colossal energy. Through this direct corridor, high-energy particles from the galaxy began to penetrate unimpeded into our system. Galactic cosmic rays, born in supernova explosions, raced along these magnetic rails straight toward us. At the same time, our own solar particles were rapidly escaping along this route into the dark interstellar void. The sun's protective barrier turned out not to be a solid wall, but a strange semi-permeable membrane with enormous holes. This discovery shattered the long-held hope that the heliopause serves as an ideal shield against external threats. The magnetic anomaly clearly demonstrated that we are physically and inextricably linked to the turbulent galactic environment. Cosmic radiation can easily slide along these aligned lines straight toward the inner planets, including Earth. Our perceived safety turned out to be nothing more than an illusion, dependent on the strange whims of unknown magnetic geometry. We are not simply drifting in empty space. We are firmly tethered to it by these invisible energy cables. Any change in this complex system could have catastrophic consequences for our world. We have found ourselves vulnerable to forces whose scale is difficult to even imagine. Scientists have unsuccessfully attempted to explain this phenomenon by the simple compression of magnetic lines at the collision boundary. Theories have emerged suggesting that the colossal pressure of the interstellar medium forcibly aligns the sun's field with its own. Some physicists hypothesize the existence of unknown plasma waves that smooth out the angles of the magnetic vectors. But none of these hypotheses could fully account for such ideal, mathematically precise parallelism. It seemed as though we were missing something fundamental in our very understanding of the nature of magnetism. Something incredibly powerful and hidden from our eyes dictates its harsh rules at the very edge of our world. This grand enigma gave rise to a multitude of new, sometimes the most radical and grim scientific theories. If the magnetic field of a massive galaxy behaves so strangely specifically around us, does that mean we are special? Or far worse, is this some universal law that makes absolutely all star systems equally vulnerable? This thought made leading astronomers look with dread at the other twinkling stars in the night sky. The problem suddenly ceased to be our local headache and took on a truly global scale. The threat of cosmic radiation began to seem like an inevitable reality for every corner of the universe. We finally realized clearly that we have absolutely no understanding of the true architecture of the space surrounding us. What we had considered reliable boundaries for decades turned out to be a complex and unpredictable physical zone. The instruments of the old Voyager repeatedly disproved everything that students were taught at the world's top universities. The magnetic anomaly became the final heavy nail in the coffin of the old, naive, and safe astrophysics. We have entered a new era of total scientific uncertainty and growing existential anxiety. The old textbooks on the structure of the cosmos could safely be thrown in the trash. The feeling of losing control over the situation became the main topic of discussion in the scientific community. Researchers realized that their tools were too primitive to understand processes of such colossal scale. We can only record the consequences of these cosmic forces, but we are completely incapable of predicting their behavior. The galaxy lives by its own harsh laws, ignoring our attempts to squeeze it into the framework of convenient formulas. The human mind has hit a wall that cannot yet be overcome with our current knowledge. This realization makes us feel like a tiny speck of dust on the edge of a bottomless abyss. And the most frightening thing about this incredible magnetic mystery is that we have no way of influencing it. We are completely at the mercy of the unstable nature of this strange, aligned magnetic highway at the edge of our solar system. If these lines were to suddenly change their configuration one day, powerful streams of deadly radiation could pour directly onto Earth. Our planet's magnetic field might simply be unable to cope with such a dense flow of high-energy particles. Our fate hangs by thin, invisible threads, the nature of which is completely beyond our understanding and control. This frightening conclusion forces us to rethink humanity's very place in the infinite universe. We can no longer feel like protected inhabitants of a cozy corner of the Milky Way. Every day, our planet continues its journey through a potentially hostile and unpredictable space full of hidden threats. Our fate hangs by thin, invisible threads, the nature of which is completely beyond our understanding. And this applies not only to our solitary star, but to the entire vast Milky Way. The realization that our local models do not work quickly led to an even more frightening conclusion. If the sun's heliopause is such an aggressive, dense, and hot zone, then this must be a universal law of nature. It is not merely a strange feature of our particular star, but a fundamental, harsh rule of survival in the galaxy. Each of the billions of stars in the night sky is surrounded by exactly the same seething, resistant barrier. Spacecraft have proven that the outskirts of star systems are zones of extreme physical stress. The entire universe suddenly appeared before us in a completely different, far more brutal and dangerous light. For too long, we have been accustomed to romanticizing space, imagining it as a peaceful place for future interstellar travel. In science fiction movies, ships glide easily between stars, like cruise liners on a calm ocean. But now we can clearly see that every star is an isolated bubble, trapped under immense pressure. The Milky Way is teeming with these tense, colliding astrospheres, desperately fighting for their survival every second. The boundaries of these bubbles are constantly deforming, contracting, and expanding under the influence of monstrous external forces. Interstellar space turned out not to be a quiet void, but a zone of continuous and monstrous physical conflict. Scientists have discovered that the interstellar medium is filled with clouds of dense gas, dust, and deadly radiation. Stars do not simply hang motionless in this medium, they race through it at tremendous speeds. Because of this motion, they literally blast their way through a dense, scorching, and extremely hostile plasma environment. This motion creates a powerful shock wave in front of every star, similar to the wave in front of a fast-moving ship. The temperature in this collision zone reaches unimaginable levels, turning any object in its path to ash. And this happens to absolutely every star in our vast universe. If we could view our home galaxy from the outside through special magnetic filters, we would not see a beautiful, harmonious spiral, but a seething cauldron overflowing with colliding shock waves. Each star system leaves behind a colossal, turbulent tail in this dense cosmic water. Stellar winds from neighboring systems collide with tremendous force, generating new magnetic anomalies. These continuous collisions trigger powerful bursts of radiation that spread millions of light years in all directions. In this chaotic and brutal world, there are no quiet, peaceful, or safe havens for fragile worlds. Such a picture shatters all our long-held illusions about the peaceful coexistence of planets and stars. We realize that our solar system is merely a tiny raft tossed from side to side in this storm. Even our own sun periodically experiences colossal stress as it struggles to keep its protective bubble intact. When the density of the interstellar cloud around us increases, the heliosphere contracts, allowing radiation to come closer to Earth. This means that the climate and life itself on our planet depend on the whims of this harsh cosmic weather. Invisible battles at the edges of the system have a direct impact on every living organism. This alarming discovery completely changes our long-term plans for the hypothetical colonization of deep space. Just to reach the star closest to us, Alpha Centauri, any spacecraft would have to fight its way through a veritable hell. First, we'll need to find a way to navigate through our own dense and incredibly hot heliopause. In doing so, the spacecraft must avoid falling into a deadly magnetic trap and burning up in the plasma streams. Even the strongest materials on Earth may not withstand such extreme radiation and thermal pressure. This is the first and perhaps the most difficult obstacle on the path to the stars. But even if the spacecraft miraculously crosses this boundary, even harsher trials await it further on. It will then have to spend many years sailing through a dense, high-energy interstellar medium that will literally erode the hull. At immense speeds, cosmic dust turns into destructive shrapnel that pierces right through metal. And then, at the end of the journey, travelers will have to face an equally aggressive oncoming shockwave from an alien star system. Interstellar travel now seems like an almost impossible technical challenge for our fragile biology. The human body is simply not adapted to survive in such an aggressive radiation environment. All these incredible obstacles make one reflect on the very nature of the universe and its structure. The space between worlds actively resists any artificial movement of physical objects. It seems as though the very basic structure of the galaxy is deliberately isolating star systems from one another. It builds insurmountable walls of fire to lock every civilization in its home world forever. Perhaps it is precisely this extreme turbulence of the cosmic environment that is the primary and most logical answer to the famous Fermi paradox. Advanced civilizations are simply physically unable to overcome this raging ocean of plasma and radiation. We have become unwitting hostages of a grand cosmic mechanism that tolerates no tranquility. This cruel universal law of chaos reigns wherever we point our most advanced radio telescopes. What we have so long and naively taken for the beautiful twinkling light of the stars is, in fact, the glimmers of grand battles. Stars wage a continuous, desperate struggle against their environment, preventing it from crushing their fragile inner planets. This harsh physical reality extends to the entire visible depth of our vast universe. There is nowhere to hide from this endless confrontation. Upon learning the truth, the global scientific community was forced to urgently rewrite all its global cosmological models. The entire history of the universe's development is now viewed through the prism of this continuous energetic conflict. It turned out that cold, empty space contains more aggressive energy than the luminous stars themselves. This invisible, hidden power governs the evolution of entire galaxies and harshly dictates its terms to absolutely all forms of life. Once again, we have realized our incredible, minuscule insignificance in the face of this all-encompassing and indifferent cosmic storm. Humanity has had to come down from the heavens to solid Earth and acknowledge its complete physical powerlessness. The latest observations from the Voyager spacecraft have made our existential loneliness an even more acute and frighteningly tangible reality. We used to hope that only a harmless, cold void separated us, one that could easily be crossed in a powerful spacecraft. Now we know for certain that we are forever separated by raging, fiery oceans of unpredictable magnetic plasma. We are like wild natives on a small, isolated island who, for the first time in history, have grasped the true fury of the sea surrounding them. They built fragile boats, unaware that giant, deadly waves awaited them beyond the reef. And this universal ocean of chaos will never calm down or become friendly toward us. New data continues to come in, And every figure only confirms this ruthless diagnosis. Scientists are creating increasingly complex simulations, but they only reveal new levels of cosmic threats. We are beginning to understand that life on Earth is an incredible statistical anomaly, a miracle that arose in defiance of all the rules. The galaxy was not created to be the cradle of intelligence. It was created for the endless destruction and creation of stars. The realization of this fact changes not only science, but human philosophy itself. We must learn to live with the thought that the cosmos is categorically opposed to our presence within it. From this turning point on, any casual glance at the starry night sky evokes a deep subconscious anxiety. Behind every beautiful twinkling light now clearly lies a brutal battle for survival in a dense environment. Space has forever lost its former romantic innocence and stands before us in all its terrifying, deadly grandeur. But the most frightening thing was not what is happening out there, far away among other cold and indifferent celestial bodies. The most frightening thing is that these discoveries directly affect our own earthly safety. We have always instinctively felt completely safe on our cozy blue planet. Humanity believed we were safely tucked away in a quiet corner of our tranquil galaxy. Earth's atmosphere and global magnetic field gave us a false sense of complete control over the situation. We carelessly built huge metropolises, developed cutting-edge technologies, and gave no thought whatsoever to global cosmic threats. For decades, scientists assured us of the absolute stability of the surrounding cosmic environment. But data from the edge of the solar system has mercilessly shattered this sweet and naive illusion of safety. For a long time, we considered the vacuum between the stars to be an absolutely empty and harmless place. Astronomers believed that nothing threatened our world in the vastness of the Milky Way. The solar system seemed to us like a kind of reliable fortress with thick, invisible walls. No one even entertained the thought that this fortress was constantly subjected to colossal pressure from the outside. Our entire scientific paradigm was built on the foundation of unshakable cosmic tranquility. Reality turned out to be much harsher and more frightening. The discovery of incredible pressure and high temperatures beyond the heliopause has forever changed the status of our home. We are no longer sailing on a comfortable cruise liner across a quiet and safe cosmic sea. In reality, we are locked inside an experimental submarine, lowered to an incredible depth. The walls of our solar system constantly creak and bend under the monstrous pressure of the outer interstellar medium. Every second, our protective bubble holds back a force capable of easily wiping us off the face of the universe. Interstellar plasma continuously attacks our boundaries, trying to break through, and this extremely fragile protection depends entirely on a single, unstable source. Only the continuous and powerful solar wind keeps these scorching, invisible walls from collapsing inward. This stream of charged particles serves as the sole shield between life on Earth and a radiant hell. But we know full well that stellar activity is by no means absolutely constant or flawless. The Sun periodically shifts through its complex cycles, sometimes intensifying and sometimes noticeably weakening the emissions of its life-saving plasma. And any significant pause in this wind could prove fatal for all inhabitants of Earth. Observations of other stars show that stars sometimes enter prolonged periods of abnormal dormancy. Our Sun, too, has its own long history of such unpredictable drops in activity. At such moments, the flow of particles from the star drops critically, leaving the system almost defenseless. We do not yet understand all the mechanisms that govern this complex internal timer of our star. It is impossible to predict exactly when the next global decline in solar pressure will occur. This keeps the scientific community in a constant state of tension and anticipation of new data. What will happen if our star suddenly decides to take a breather and reduces the wind pressure? The heliosphere will inevitably begin to rapidly contract under the colossal pressure of the outer plasma ocean. The scorching interstellar medium and deadly radiation would immediately pour into our defenseless system. The boundary of the collision would shift closer to Earth, exposing our atmosphere to an unbearable flood of cosmic rays. The planet's magnetic field simply wouldn't be able to cope with such a colossal external load. And this apocalyptic scenario is by no means the invention of science fiction writers. It is a harsh physical reality. Scientists suggest that such compressions of the protective bubble have already occurred in our planet's distant past. Geological data point to periods of sudden increases in background radiation on the surface. Earth may have already been directly exposed to this aggressive interstellar radiation millions of years ago. Such events could have caused mass extinctions of species and irreversible global climate catastrophes. Mutations in the genomes of ancient animals may have been directly linked to these cosmic intrusions. The history of our planet is closely intertwined with the harsh laws of the surrounding interstellar environment. We are simply lucky to be living during a period of relative stability in our stellar shield. Human civilization has developed under incredibly favorable conditions by the standards of our harsh galaxy. We were given a chance to build our world, while outer space remained at a safe distance from our orbits. But no astrophysicist can guarantee that this peaceful period will last forever. The cosmic clock is ticking, and sooner or later, this shield will begin to recede again. No technologically advanced nation can prepare in advance for this massive event. The realization that we live inside a high-pressure chamber evokes a profound existential fear. We are not the confident masters of our own destiny, but merely temporary passengers on a fragile cosmic vessel. Our daily survival is not the result of our own strength, but merely a fortunate convergence of complex physical circumstances. We are completely and utterly vulnerable in the face of processes whose scale we cannot even begin to comprehend. Any cosmic storm could instantly wipe out millennia of human progress. This harsh truth has forever changed the psychology of modern exploration of deep and distant space. We used to gaze at the stars with childlike wonder and dreams of great journeys. Now, every glance at the night sky is accompanied by a soul-chilling realization of our own insignificance. Deep space has ceased to be a playground for bold fantasies and has become a high-risk zone. Astronomy has become a science not only of discovery, but also of constant monitoring of global risks. We have come to realize that we are on the front lines of an invisible war waged by the mighty forces of nature. And in this epic battle, humanity is relegated to the role of a silent and powerless observer. Now, astronomers monitor solar activity not only for the sake of beautiful aurora forecasts. With bated breath, they watch for the slightest signs of a weakening in our vital protective wind. Every disruption in the sun's magnetic field is perceived as a potential hole in the hull of our ship. We are under constant, invisible siege from the hostile galaxy surrounding us. Dozens of space observatories collect data daily, trying to predict the next moves of our star. And we have nowhere to flee from this submarine if its walls ever fail to withstand the pressure. The illusion of safety has finally dissipated, leaving us alone with the cold and indifferent cosmos. We have realized that our civilization hangs by a thread, dependent on the star's complex thermonuclear reactions. This forces us to look at all our petty earthly problems and conflicts in a completely new light. Humanity bustles about inside a tiny bubble, while outside, a storm rages that is capable of destroying us. And the most alarming thing about this storm is that its boundaries are constantly shifting and breathing. For a long time, conventional science regarded the boundaries of the solar system as strict, immovable, and static geometric lines. Scientists drew a clear, perfect circle on maps, beyond which dead interstellar space began immediately. It was assumed that the heliopause was a solid concrete wall, built once and frozen in place for millions of years. But continuous monitoring data shattered this reassuring classical theory of an unchanging cosmos. It turned out that the boundary of our world is constantly pulsating, bending and behaving like a living organism. This mobility came as a real shock to the entire physics community. It turned out that the cosmos absolutely cannot tolerate straight lines or rigid geometric static. The interaction of two powerful plasma flows gives rise to an incredibly complex and dynamic architecture at the edge of the system. This boundary resembles the churning surface of boiling water more than the rigid shell of a planet. Constant fluctuations in temperature and pressure create chaos on a colossal scale there. Scorching gas masses continuously flow, forming giant cosmic whirlpools. We discovered an entirely new ecosystem there, composed of magnetic fields and radiation. The wall protecting us from the scorching outer plasma is in constant and very nervous motion. It breathes, reacting to every slightest surge or dip in the activity of our unstable star. When the Sun, at the peak of its cycle, ejects more particles, the heliosphere expands outward with great effort. When the star calms down, the monstrous external pressure of the galaxy relentlessly squeezes our protective bubble back in. This grand tug-of-war is taking place right now at colossal distances from our planet. The outcome of this endless struggle changes literally every day. Sensors have detected giant waves and ripples running across the entire vast surface of the heliopause. It resembles the trembling of a taut soap bubble in a strong, gusty wind. Sometimes huge chunks of plasma break away from this boundary and are carried off into deep space. At other times, the external environment aggressively pushes sections of the wall deep into our familiar territory. The boundary has proven to be incredibly elastic, dynamic, and frighteningly unstable in its basic physical structure. It resembles the skin of a giant beast shuddering at the touch of the cold void. These gigantic plasma waves can reach sizes several times greater than the distance from Earth to the Sun. The speed at which they propagate across the surface of the heliopause simply defies ordinary human perception. When such a wave passes along the boundary, it generates powerful bursts of electromagnetic radiation. Scientists are trying to create a detailed map of these space storms, but they change too rapidly. What was true just yesterday presents a completely different physical picture today. We are trying to study a hurricane while standing right in the center of its funnel. This instability means we cannot accurately predict the behavior of our only protective system. Scientists cannot say exactly where this wall will be in 10 or 100 years. It is quite possible that it is currently in a state of deep historical contraction, closing in on the planets. The Voyager probe crossed it at a single point in time, but now it may already be elsewhere. We are trying to measure something that is constantly shifting and eluding our understanding. The heliosphere refuses to obey our strict rules. Some researchers believe that these pulsations may have a pronounced seasonal character on a galactic scale. The solar system moves through various clouds of interstellar gas of varying density and composition. Upon entering a denser cloud, our bubble begins to contract much faster and more intensely. Right now, we may be approaching a region of the galaxy with extremely aggressive physical conditions. This will cause the heliopause to bend to critical limits, testing the strength of Earth's magnetic shield. no one knows the exact forecast for space weather over the coming millennia. The realization that the wall is breathing adds a whole new level of anxiety to astrophysics. This is not a passive shield, but an active combat zone, a front line that is constantly shifting. Energy tsunamis regularly crash against this barrier, causing it to vibrate at incredible frequencies. And if one of these cosmic waves proves too powerful, the membrane's elasticity may not hold. A breach in the heliopause in even a single spot will trigger a chain reaction of catastrophic changes within the system. Hard radiation will burn through this breach like a laser through a thin sheet of paper. We are utterly powerless against these gigantic pulsations of our life-saving solar cocoon. All humanity can do is passively watch the graphs, praying that the amplitude of the oscillations does not exceed the critical threshold. The breathing of this wall reminds us that space is not a backdrop, but a living process. And this process is utterly indifferent to our existence on a tiny blue speck near a star. We are accidental witnesses to the grandeur and horror of these collisions, locked inside a breathing cell. We are not allowed to interfere with this grand cosmic mechanism. Every new pulsation of the heliosphere emits specific electromagnetic signals and echoes into space. Scientists at observatories listen to these rhythms, trying to decipher the logic behind the movement of this colossal barrier. But the system is too complex, chaotic, and full of invisible variables to yield to precise analysis. The breathing boundary mocks our pitiful attempts to force it into strict mathematical frameworks. Reality has once again proven to be more complex, more terrifying, and more dynamic than any of our dry scientific theories. Every new discovery only multiplies the number of unsolvable mysteries. Physicists are forced to develop entirely new branches of science just to describe what is happening at the boundary. Classical plasma physics does not work under such extreme and volatile conditions. We are compelled to build gigantic supercomputers to model the behavior of this living cosmic wall. But even the most powerful algorithms falter in the face of the unpredictable nature of interstellar turbulent chaos. The human mind still struggles to grasp a picture where planets and stars are merely grains of sand in a hurricane. We have yet to learn the true language of this raging element, and this fact makes one wonder what lies even further, beyond the limits of this pulsating membrane. If the boundary of the solar wind concealed so many shocking, incredible, and dangerous secrets, what then does the true gravitational edge of our solar system hide? A destination still millennia away? The heliopause is merely the first frontier, but by no means the farthest limit of our world's influence. Ahead lie realms where even the sun's light turns into a faint, barely perceptible spark. True darkness and genuine unknowns await explorers ahead, in the gigantic Oort cloud. The heliopause is merely the place where our solar wind finally dies and comes to a halt. But the gravitational reach of our sun extends into the terrifying darkness far beyond this raging wall of plasma. Far beyond the searing shock and magnetic anomalies lies the true, final boundary of the solar system. This colossal and mysterious sphere of icy debris is known to astronomers as the giant Oort cloud, and this place conceals mysteries whose scale we are even afraid to imagine right now. The Oort cloud is an incredibly vast reservoir consisting of billions of ancient icy comets and asteroids. They circle slowly and silently in the darkness, a light year away from our hot star. There is no protective solar wind, no dense protective bubble, and no warming radiation. It is a realm of absolute darkness, extreme cold, and ghostly gravity, barely holding these rocks together. It would take Voyager hundreds of years of flight just to reach the inner edge of this cloud. If the heliopause turned out to be a zone of chaos and impossible physics, then the Oort cloud is frightening in its absolute impenetrability. We have absolutely no idea what happens to these icy bodies in the aggressive interstellar medium. They are located right in the very dense, hot plasma ocean that we now know exists. How do they survive in these extreme conditions without evaporating or being destroyed by the pressure of the galaxy? Our current models cannot explain the stability of this cloud in such a hostile environment. Perhaps, out there in the darkness, processes are unfolding that will completely overturn what little we know about astrophysics. The Oort cloud is constantly bombarded by galactic rays and shock waves from distant supernova explosions. Sometimes this delicate balance is disrupted, and a giant icy comet is flung from its distant orbit. It hurtles toward Earth, carrying with it the threat of global annihilation of all life on our planet. This distant frontier is not merely a pile of rocks. It is a loaded cosmic gun pointed at us. We have realized that our solar system is embedded in the galaxy in a far more complex way than previously thought. Our boundaries penetrate deep into a hostile environment, like tentacles, trying to hold on to ancient building material, and we have absolutely no control over what is happening at these incredible frontiers. We are blind, deaf, and helpless in the face of events unfolding in the Oort cloud right now. The lack of data breeds paranoia, and the knowledge of the environment's hostility turns that paranoia into panic. Every new discovery pushes us further away from the cherished understanding of the true workings of our complex world. We are trying to illuminate a vast black cave with a dim flashlight, and every beam reveals only new monsters. Voyager has given us invaluable knowledge, but the price of that knowledge has been the complete destruction of our scientific peace of mind. We have hit an insurmountable limit of our current technological development and human biological intelligence. Beyond the limits of our understanding lies a universe that plays by completely alien, cruel, and indifferent rules. All that remains for researchers is to passively observe the rare signals from the fading historical probe. Sooner or later, Voyager's nuclear batteries will finally run out, and it will fall silent forever in the cold darkness. It will remain there, amid raging plasma and icy boulders, as a silent monument to our incredible scientific hubris. We will be blinded once again, having left our trusted sentinel behind, the one who told us the terrifying truth about the world. And this frightening truth will remain with humanity forever, forcing us to look at the sky in a completely different way. The probe's journey to the edge of the solar system became the most devastating event for modern theoretical cosmology. Voyager's data did not merely correct our old formulas, they burned thick academic textbooks to ashes. All of our orderly, logical, and safe physics turned out to be nothing more than a convenient local illusion. For years, we studied the properties of a greenhouse plant, naively believing that we understood the laws of survival in the wild jungle. The true, harsh reality was hidden behind a thin, protective dome, which we had always taken for granted. Scientists had to bitterly admit that our basic models of the universe were fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. We firmly believed in an ideal, empty vacuum, but found a dense, resistant, and heavy plasma wall. We predicted the absolute cold of the void, but thermometers recorded unbearable heat exceeding the temperature of stars. We expected logical variations in magnetic fields, but encountered an inexplicable order that defied randomness. Every parameter, every number from the system's boundary screamed of our total and hopeless scientific blindness. This brutal lesson forever shattered the illusion of our safe, privileged solitude in the universe. We can no longer console ourselves with the thought that we live in a quiet and empty province of a vast galaxy. The edge of our system is an incredibly vibrant, aggressive, and dynamic zone of continuous energetic conflict. Every second, the cosmos tries to crush our fragile protective bubble with its colossal and indifferent mass. And we exist only because our little sun still has the strength to resist this pressure. The realization of this fragility gives rise to a deep, overwhelming existential anxiety in anyone who understands these figures. If science has been so spectacularly wrong in its study of our nearest cosmic threshold, what else do we not know? It is quite possible that all our bold fantasies about future interstellar travel are nothing more than children's fairy tales. The vast cosmos has turned out to be so hostile, complex, and aggressive that surviving in it seems like a mathematically impossible miracle. Our technological development has run up against harsh physical barriers we could not even have suspected before. Astrophysicists now view data from any new deep space telescopes with caution and skepticism. If reality shatters our expectations so easily right under our noses, what is happening in deep space? We are forced to rewrite the very definition of space, matter, and safety on a scale encompassing all of humanity. The good old predictable universe ended forever on the day Voyager pierced the invisible wall of the heliopause. We were left face to face with the terrifying unknown that surrounds us from every possible direction. Now we know for certain that our world is not an open door to the infinite possibilities of the galaxy. Our world is a besieged fortress, surrounded by a raging ocean of scorching, dense, and magnetized cosmic chaos. We must be incredibly grateful to fate for every new day spent inside this fragile protective cocoon. Humanity must learn to live with this constant, oppressive sense of total vulnerability in the face of the overwhelming forces of nature. We have only just begun to open our eyes, and the very first glance beyond our homes has filled our hearts with primal terror. And this terror will not disappear, because now we can no longer pretend that we do not understand. The knowledge of how aggressive and cruel reality is has become our heavy, invisible intellectual burden. Voyager showed us that emptiness has never been empty, and silence has never been truly silent. Space roars, presses, and seethes right beyond the borders of our small, temporarily safe earthly oasis. And we can only hope that this living wall will never tremble and collapse upon us. For centuries, we have gazed upon the dark, star-studded night sky with sincere romantic admiration. We always naively believed that this silent infinity was patiently and kindly awaiting our imminent arrival. But the old mechanical scout brought us a completely different, terrifying, and cruel message from the edge of the system. It turned out that the universe is not merely not waiting for us. It actively resists the very fact of our physical presence. What we mistakenly took for a serene void turned out to be a roaring ocean of colossal and destructive cosmic energies. Our familiar and well-studied world officially ended where the warm and life-giving solar wind ceased. We suddenly and painfully realized that we were tiny, helpless passengers inside a fragile bathyscaphe at a monstrous depth. Beyond the ship's hull, unbearable heat, incredible density, and strange, illogical magnetic storms rage. Reality turned out to be completely different from what we had depicted for decades in our rigorous and elegant physical models. Our frontier is not a quiet harbor, but a front line that breathes, pulsates, and threatens our very existence every second.